San Francisco 49ers quarterback Brock Purdy is injured, and his season has officially come to an end as he will not play against the Arizona Cardinals. We'll talk about all the fallout from this situation. We'll have a conversation about, Brock playing in this game that didn't matter behind a patchwork offensive line. We're going to talk about, let's have a real conversation about Brock Purdy's performance against the Lions, not just one that's chalked up to, he threw 2 interceptions, end of story. No, football requires discussion. It requires full context, requires discussing all the things. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we're in the offseason without being in the offseason. What a weird time to be alive. But you're still faithful. I know it. Even if you're frustrated, even if you're upset, even if you don't like the way the season has gone, I know you guys are still going to hold it down no matter what. So, of course, shout out to the SDS. Dropping SDS in the chat if we're still vibing no matter what. And let's talk about it. The day after, oh boy. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see it. What is going down, Sourdough Squad? Dylan says, can we skip to the draft? We're 1 week away. Tony, I see Tony, bro. Tony is cooking. So I have a Facebook group. It's called the SF Niners Fan Chat. I think we got like over 20,000 people in this group. Tony's in there. He's one of the mods. Bro is cooking. Like, if you want some early draft content, Tony, I'm looking over there. I'm like, okay. He's throwing out prospects for every position. I like it. I love it. Keep going, man. But for me, we're officially on the clock. We're a week away from draft season being fully engaged. We've been dipping our toes in draft season. It's not official yet. I cannot, in good faith, start draft season until the season is officially over. It's been my motto going all the way back since 2020 when the season was dead upon arrival, and we just had to wait. And then we're going to have a celebration, the kickoff of draft season. Once the game against the Cardinals officially comes to an end, we will celebrate, or at least celebrate with all of those who partake. But shout out to John. Appreciate you, man. Member for 10 months. He says, SDS, hello from the 559. Cheers to you guys. Happy New Year. I can't believe the season's over, man. We blinked, and the season is over. Man, we were so up to our eyeballs in off-season drama that we never had a true off-season. And then it was like, the season is here. And then the season was like, it kind of feels like the preseason. And then it was like, no, it's the real season. And then by like week 6, it was like, oh crap, we're actually in the season. So what a unfortunate year 2024 has been from a 49ers football perspective. But it is what it is. We're still here. We're going to talk about it. If you need to use this as a therapy session, feel free to vent. We'll go through all the updates. I see Fluffy asking for a Brock Purdy injury update. We'll go through all the updates really quickly, and then we'll kind of transition into talking about the Lions game. I want to talk about Brock Purdy's game against the Lions because it feels so hyperbolic shocking. But I would love to talk about his performance, give an honest assessment of his performance against the Lions. Look forward to next year. And then we'll just kind of open it up. Justin said, Brad, have you seen Isaiah McGuire this season? Oh, I've seen him. I've seen him. I feel like every time I turn on a Browns game, we hear, oh, Isaiah McGuire with the tackle. And if you don't know, Isaiah McGuire went to the Browns after the 49ers had selected Jake Moody and our good friend Cam Latu, but I digress. Let's talk about the updates to Purdy and what's going on with him. And we'll kind of take that conversation. We'll go through the updates, and then we'll circle back to Purdy for a little bit of a longer conversation, because I think it requires it. I think we need to have a conversation about Brock because there's so many takes flying left and right. Let's talk about it. But let's talk about this first. So Brock Purdy's season is officially over, and it's due to injury. So we honestly don't know if Brock was going to play against the Arizona Cardinals, even if he got out of this game healthy. But he gets sacked late in the game against the Lions. You have a Lions defender put his helmet into his surgically repaired throwing elbow. He has to exit the game due to dealing with some nerve issues from that hit. And as a result, he does not come back in. We did find out directly after the game that he was able to avoid a UCL tear. So that's good. And from what we have heard from Kyle Shanahan's press conference this morning, is that Brock Purdy has avoided a serious injury. So it's a elbow contusion with a little bit of a nerve flare-ups, but he was able to avoid a serious injury. So to me, that's good news. It's not good news that he got injured. It's just I was saying it last night in my reaction. It was insult to injury. But it does sound like he'll be fine. Doesn't sound like there's going to be any type of surgery required, nothing like that. So just a good old fashioned helmet to the elbow and bruising you up. Sure, that doesn't feel great. So, but unfortunately, what that means is Brock's season is over. Through 16 games, we've seen it all from Brock. And again, like I said, we'll circle back to a proper Brock conversation, because I think there's just been a lot of stuff going around. And so I just want to talk about it, just have an open conversation about it, because I know our fan base feels multiple different ways about Brock at the moment. And I'll say this: you are absolutely fair to think about Brock however you want to think. I'm not going to tell you how to think, but I will provide my opinion on the matter. So I want to talk about it. But we also got that also opens up the door for who is going to start against Arizona. Is it going to be Brandon Allen, or is it going to be Josh Dobbs? We don't know. Kyle Shanahan was non-committal on who is going to be the starting quarterback in the final game of the year. Honestly, if Kyle doesn't start Josh Dobbs, I just assume he's trolling the fan base at this point, because the calls for Joshua Dobbs to start against the Green Bay Packers in what we considered at the time a must-win game, they decided to go with Brandon Allen. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I can't rationalize the decision to go with Brandon Allen, but the fact that Kyle did discuss after the game why Dobbs was quarterback 2 in this game against the Lions, his rationale was, Well, with our banged up offensive line, and if we needed another quarterback to go, we would probably need to use their legs. We would need to take advantage of Dobbs' ability to run. And that was my logic for starting Dobbs against the Packers in a frigid game where you knew the ball wasn't going to be popping out of these guys' hands. It was going to have to be a game that was won on the ground. I was like, man, this seems like a perfect opportunity for Dobbs to start against the Packers in a game where they have to win because he has an added ability to use his legs. And we saw that on display last night against the Lions. Josh Dobbs comes in, looks like Josh Dobbs, right? Looks good. Looks like a competent quarterback, and he scores a rushing touchdown. And it was just like, man, like this was the reasoning for starting Dobbs against the Packers, was because you knew he was going to find whatever quarterback was playing was going to find themselves in an unfortunate situation within the pocket, and having the ability to use your legs and create out of structure, we knew that was going to be needed. And so I get it. Josh Allen, or not Josh Allen, Brandon Allen's been here. He's been in the system. They probably wanted to roll with him because he had been that guy that has been here, and they obviously have built up some trust with him. So I can't say that I don't understand it, but I think if we take more of a high level perspective, like, because clearly they're in the building, so they're in the weeds, and they're going through much different information than we are on the outside. But from the outside, you can see that there's a clear physical advantage from Dobbs over Allen. And so that's really what it boiled down to, was, man, just give them a shot, man. But they didn't do it, and I don't know. So I think they should start Dobbs. I don't even think it should be a question. Dobbs should get the start against Arizona, especially against his old team. Like, why not? If we don't forget, he started for Arizona Cardinals last year. So let him go. Let him cook. Let him get an opportunity. Basically, just stored him in the closet for all this stuff. But whatever. Charvarius Ward is expected to return to the team this week after having an excused absence last week for good news. Charvarius Ward welcomed the birth of his son. And so, yeah, good for him, man. Like, Charvarius Ward still, probably didn't need to return when he did, but I commend him for doing so, and, not wanting to give up on his guys. And so if he plays this week, keep in mind, Charvarius Ward is an unrestricted free agent. So if he plays this week, it could be his last game with the 49ers. We'll see. I think we would have to assume that with Renardo Green's emergence, and I think that's why they drafted Renardo Green, is to be potentially the replacement for Charvarius, plus the Deommodore Lenoir extension. I think things were already kind of headed that way. But we'll see. We'll see what happens, with Ward moving forward. Now, probably the most disliked 49er right now, it's got to be Jake Moody. The San Francisco 49ers lost to the Lions by 6 points. Jake Moody missed 2 field goals and an extra point that would have totaled 7 points. So is it all on Jake Moody to win that game for the 49ers? No. But when your job is to make field goals and put points on the board, and you don't do that, in a production-based business, you can't expect any other type of reaction. Like, and it's a tough situation because it takes me back to draft night when we were live on stream and we found out that Jake Moody was the pick. And the first thing that came out of my mouth was, all right, well, you just put, I likened it. My example was because you drafted Jake Moody in the 3rd round, you're effectively placing the outside pressure, maybe even internal pressure of drafting a quarterback in the top 5. Meaning, when you draft a quarterback in the top 5, the expectation is most of like 99% of the time that they're either going to start right away or they're eventually going to become an all-pro player with the hopes of becoming a future Hall of Famer. That's why you're drafting them in the top 5. It doesn't always happen that way, but that's the pressure that comes along with it. That's the expectations that come along with it. So when you draft a kicker in the 3rd round, you're taking the expectation of Moody of being the best kicker in the NFL at some point in his career, and you're placing that on him as a rookie. So when Moody comes out and you see him struggling in the preseason, and you see a fan base who is absolutely loves Robbie Gould, and they move off of him for this guy. And so the fan base is already like, oh, well, why did we move off Robbie? And they're like, okay, well, let's see what this guy has. He's a 3rd round pick. He better be better than Robbie, right? Or again, external expectation, external pressure. And when you're a kicker, all you do is work under pressure. It's already one of the most pressurized positions in all of sports. I mean, your only job is to come in and kick a ball while everyone is staring at you to see if you make it. Like, no pressure. But now add the pressure of being a 3rd round draft pick, high expectations of a fan base. And this fan base lets you know when you're not meeting their expectations. And, I talk about it all the time. I say confidence in the NFL is fragile and it must be protected at all costs. Because when a player loses their confidence, it doesn't matter how physically gifted they are, doesn't matter how talented they are. If they don't have a belief in themselves to go out and execute, they will make mistakes. And that's just the name of the game. That's why when we talk about this game, it comes down to being a lot more mental than it does come down to being physical. Because everyone's physical at this level. Everyone's big, fast, strong. Everyone's got that. What separates the great players is their mental fortitude, how they bounce back from adversity, how they handle pressure, how they execute, how technically sound they are, how consistent they are. Those are all functions of mental processing. So, again, for Jake, he's in the pressure cooker right now, and it's not going well. So the thing with Jake is he will be coming in to, this is from Lombardi, he'll be coming in to kick. There won't be any competition. And I honestly didn't expect that. I didn't expect the 49ers with 1 week to just bring in some random kickers. Didn't expect that. I expect him to kick in this game. One last opportunity to kind of switch the narrative on him. And then we go into the offseason, and at the very minimum, there will be another kicker in training camp. competing with him at minimum if they don't flat out just release him. So the only thing that I think is saving Jake Moody from not being released is the fact that he's a third round draft pick. That's working to his benefit at the moment, is that they invested a high draft pick into him, even if it was a comp third, even if it was basically an early fourth round pick. It doesn't matter. This is why you look across the field and you see Jake Bates, a former brick salesman, outperforming a third round draft pick. Again, it's just like, it's why there was so much pushback on not necessarily Jake Moody. There's more pushback on Moody being a third round draft pick than I think actually the player. And so now you have two specialists, a third and fourth round draft pick. You know, Mitch, I don't know if he's going to be your punter next year. And I don't know if Moody's going to be your kicker next year. And do they just go for the clean sweep and they move on from Tabor and they just go new special teams room, new special teams coach, and they just reset that room? Because I don't know, man. They need a new punter. Like Mitch is dealing with chronic back issues, so I don't know if you can rely on that. And if Jake Moody is proven to be unreliable, then can you rely on someone who's unreliable? And if you're not happy with your special teams coach, like, there might be just like, oh, let's reset that room. Let's just get a whole new vibe in here, whole new energy. Let's get people in here that don't have all these pre-existing traumas, and let's just restart. So who knows? That could be a conversation that we have in the off season. So I don't know, man. You just, again, I don't have. I think Jake's a nice kid. No problems with Jake from that perspective, but it is what it is. We live in this is a production-based business, and if you don't produce, they find someone else who can produce, and that's where we're at. So I kind of want to switch gears from that conversation, and let's have a conversation about Brock Purdy. What could go wrong? So clearly Brock Purdy is under heavy scrutiny. He's been under heavy scrutiny since he's came in against the Dolphins in 2022 as a third string quarterback, Mr. Irrelevant, in relief of both Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. So right now, the conversation, I think being around Brock and his performance against the Lions is, it's a skewed perception, because it's either Brock is terrible, this is why you don't pay him, or it's, we'll look at everything else around him. Look at what happened. Look at how the 49ers completely abandoned the run game and they put it all on Brock to go out there and throw and doing all, like, so there's a lot of nuance, I think, to Brock's performance against the Lions. And so this is how I view it. I thought for 3 full quarters, Brock Purdy was the best quarterback on the field. I thought without a shadow of a doubt, he was playing better than Jared Goff. Even though Jared Goff had great stats, I didn't see Jared I didn't see Jared distributing the ball the same way that I saw Brock distributing. There were some phenomenal throws from Brock. Brock had the one on the one-hander to Ricky Pearsall. He let that ball rip before Pearsall had even thought about breaking out. It was a beautiful anticipatory throw, and it was perfect, right on the money. It was a wonderful throw. He had a beautiful throw to Isaac Rendo, 40 yards downfield. He had another moon ball that he completed. He was being efficient, effective, decisive, and he looked like the Brock Purdy that we all know when Brock is on point and when Brock is playing really well. And there was a point in the fourth quarter where we had like a 3 or 4 throw sequence that has completely erased any positive things that Brock did in this game prior to that. Now, we can also say while Brock played really well for those 3 quarters, you can't turn over the football. The quarterback's number one job is to protect the ball. You got it, and it's not an easy job, but it's just the function of being a quarterback is you got to protect the football. And especially in these tight margin games that come down to one score, you can't have turnovers. You can't turn the ball over. You can't lose the turnover battle, right? I think we all agree with that. Whether you're a Brock fan, whether you're not a Brock fan, doesn't matter. That applies to every quarterback that has ever picked up a football. You can't turn over the football. That will be the quickest thing to get you on the bench, right? So let's keep that abundantly clear. So the thing is, though, when you look at how those interceptions happened and you look at the play before the first pick, he is attempting to get it to George Kittle on what looks like a delayed kind of route up the seam. Brock isn't able to step into that throw. If you go back and you watch it, he's actually kind of fading off his back foot because he has pressure. He's about to get hit by either his offensive lineman or a defensive tackle. So his base isn't set. So he throws kind of, how he kind of will throw off his back foot and kind of twerk his body, not torque. He'll twerk his body. No, he torques his body where he tries to get as much kind of force into the throw without being able to step into it. And the ball sailed to the inside of where I think the ball should have went. Thankfully, George Kittle got, obliterated on a PI, but I don't think that ball placement was particularly good. I think it needed to be towards the sideline, away from the safety, so that it was basically George Kittle with the defender versus the sideline. So the ball placement wasn't good on that throw. But if you look at it, it's not like Brock was sitting there in a clean pocket and just threw a bad pass. You can contextualize that he didn't have a clean base. He was about to get hit. He let it rip, and it wasn't a great throw. Okay. But they were able to withstand that. They get the penalty. And then the next throw. Whew. Now, I haven't watched it on tape. So I've only watched it from, the video that I recorded and being in the stands. And that throw was unfortunate. And again, I don't know if it was a depth issue with the route, because if, let's say, for example, if Pearsall gets an extra yard depth and cuts it in, that height discrepancy is much different with a deeper route. Now, I don't know if that is even the case. So that is just something to process. But for whatever reason, on a throw that Brock had been making all night over the middle, it sailed on him. It went high and went right to Kirby. I was like, dang, that was just an unfortunate throw. Unfortunate throw, unfortunate circumstance in a game that, let's call it what it is. It was that was a perception game for Brock. And because we understand we live in a hyperbolic week to week hot take world when it comes to these football takes. Everything is hyperbolic. Everything is devoid of nuance and context and all of these things. It doesn't change the outcome, but I do think it's important to properly contextualize things. And so Brock was playing fantastic. And then those two throws, you have the interception, and you're like, oh, that's brutal, right? That's brutal. Not a good throw. Sailed on him, went too high. Wasn't to me, it was an abnormal throw. It was like, man, Brock's been spraying all night, and this one just gets away from him. I was like, all right, well, that was unfortunate. And he comes back and he keeps slinging. He keeps slinging. Why do they keep slinging? Because they're not running the ball. They completely got away from running the ball in the second half. So they were one-dimensional as an offense. And again, it's just a function of what it is. That's just the context. They got away from being a balanced attack, which is part of the reason why they were operating so well as an offense in the first three quarters. They got away from it, went one-dimensional, and started throwing. And okay, Brock was doing pretty good for the most part. And then we had the second interception. The second interception, unfortunate, but that one was more so you kind of got to tip your cap to Kirby Joseph, the guy who leads the league in interceptions right now. He did not for 1 second do anything else other than wait for that route. He sat on it. He just sat on it. He knew it was coming. It was great preparation. And when he saw Pearsall break and he saw the throw was going, he just broke and cut off the route and made a great pick. What's the coaching point there? I don't know. Maybe when you see the safety in single high squatting down, who looks like he's squatting on the in-breaking route, maybe go somewhere else. Maybe I would assume that part of the thought process is that Pearsall was going to be able to get in front of Kirby, and Kirby wasn't going to be able to cut off his route so abruptly. But it is what it is. It turned into another interception. So you now have two interceptions, and it played a huge role in the outcome of the game. And hey, it was an unfortunate situation, and it just kind of crumbled on them as a result. So when we look at Brock Purdy's overall performance and you look at those two interceptions, to me, I process things as being forgivable, unforgivable through the lens of, is it correctable? Can you correct that throw, that first interception that Brock had to Ricky Pearsall that sailed? Yes, you can correct that. That is a correctable throw. We've seen Brock make that throw over the middle time and time again. That is a correctable throw. The other one where Kirby's sitting on it and squatting on it, that is also correctable. And that is more so of being more alert to reading the safety and just kind of understanding and not taking that chance, right? Not trying to force it in that situation. That is also a correctable situation. So for me, when I look at this performance from Brock, where he also added a rushing touchdown, I have a hard time being like, man, this guy who just turned 25, who is only in his second year as a full-time starter, regardless of the interceptions, outs like, and again, that's the unfortunate thing is those interceptions just absolutely evaporate any good that he had done in that game, where he had his career high in yards with 377 yards. He was 27 for 35. He was playing well. You just had I would say on total, I had counted 4 bad throws that come to my mind. I got to go back and watch the tape, but I think of 4 bad throws. The one on the PI, both interceptions, and I think there was another one to Jawan that was on the inside. Those are really the only poor throws that I saw in that game, and I would say that majority of them are correctable. So this is the thing. It's like I've seen Brock Purdy play enough good football that I am also aware that good players have bad plays. Like it's the NFL. It happens. Now, you don't want that to be the norm. You don't want that to become a consistent thing, but I'm looking around at the evaluation of this quarterback, and I'm like, I don't know that I've ever seen such scrutiny over a guy that the entire league deemed unsuitable to be a quarterback. Like, do we remember this? That the entire league passed on Brock many times, including the 49ers. He was Mr. Irrelevant for a reason, because they're saying, we don't think you can be a quarterback in the NFL. You can be a backup. You might be able to be a practice squad guy. But here we are talking about this guy who's still a young quarterback, like he's not a young quarterback. You notice how Brock is always compared to elite Josh Allen, elite Patrick Mahomes, elite, like not in the beginning part. Like no one ever compares Brock Purdy's statistics to Josh Allen's second year as a full-time starter. That never occurs. Josh Allen wasn't Josh Allen until year 3. And again, I'm not comparing Purdy to Allen. They're completely different players. That's not what's happening. I'm just talking about through the lens in which everyone constantly moves the goalpost when they talk about this kid. And I'm just like, why? For what purpose does it serve? Like, oh, I'm going to tell you why Brock Purdy isn't a good quarterback by comparing him to MVP level Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow. It's like, dude, The dude just turned 25 like 3 days ago. Like, and again, they're excuses. You're making excuses for Brock. No. If you want to compare Brock to all of these other quarterbacks, compare Brock to all these other quarterbacks in their second year as a full-time starter. Like, if we're gonna do the whole comparison thing off blind numbers, like let's at least make sure it's at least somewhat within the same realm of like context. Like, you see, this is what you see Jared Goff. Look at Jared Goff. How long has Jared Goff been in the league? This is Jared Goff's second team. He got traded from the first team. Oh, well, look at Baker. How long has Baker been in the league? Wasn't he a top 5 pick? Oh no, he was number 1 overall. That's right. What about Sam Darnold? Oh, Sam Darnold's been on 3 teams. Actually got benched for Baker. Actually got benched for PJ Walker. And guess what? You land in a good situation. You land in a situation where everything around you is working well. Now, I've been very critical of Sam Darnold. But if you've ever checked in on this channel and heard me talk about Sam Darnold, before I say anything critical about Sam Darnold, the first thing I say is he might have the best arm in the NFL. For years, I've said this. He might have arguably the best arm in the NFL. But that didn't translate to anything. It didn't translate to winning. Now he finds himself in a great situation, finds himself with a great team, great weapons, and good for him. He's playing well. Good for him. Good for him. He's playing well, but everyone's comparing Brock to him, and it's like, what did Sam do in his second full year as a starter? Why are we comparing Brock at this current level to all these other guys that have years and years and years and years have been on multiple teams, and because they're playing well now, we're somehow correlating that Brock should be on the same level as these other guys that have had 14 opportunities, multiple different stops, and have finally settled into the league and are playing well. It's like Brock settled into the league immediately as a afterthought, and you can say whatever you want about all the weapons. Brock came in and immediately played better than Jimmy Garoppolo. That's why I don't like the whole Jimmy, the Jimmy comparisons, because we saw instantly on tape Brock Purdy doing things that Jimmy never did. Ever. And it's kind of a shame. I get the notion, if we're going to start talking about contracts and getting paid, trust me, guys, I understand why people are nervous, why people are scared of paying Brock, because the overarching thought process is that if you pay Brock market value, it's going to inhibit the team's ability to build a roster. Now, I don't necessarily find that to be true, because the market is the market, and the cap has to be able to keep up with the market. So I fully expect the cap to jump up immensely this offseason. And if you don't remember, the cap jumps every year. And I think it would really make people feel better if Josh Allen just came out and got paid 75 million a year. Just so they can see that number and see like, oh, well, see, look, finally, look, that is an elite quarterback. Well, that is a top quarterback in the NFL making $75 million per year on average. That's what an elite quarterback looks like. So then when Brock gets 55 or 50 or whatever it is, it looks way more weighted properly. And I think that's the perception issues that people have about this conversation is Josh is on a different level than Brock right now when it comes to just physical skill set. It's not even a comparable thing. And he's playing at an extremely high level. So if he gets 75 and Brock's sitting at 55, that looks completely different to people. And then if the cap jumps 15% or however much it's going to jump, that also changes people's perspective of things. And on top of that, we don't even know what the structure of the deal looks like. So there could be plenty of opportunities for the deal to be structured in a way where Brock gets his money and the team can still build around him. And I think that's ultimately what it will come to. I think everyone has this like thought in their mind of where he ranks at an APY level and how that ranks against Dak, Trevor, Tua, and all of these guys. When it's like, honestly, you can make a complete fake year, fully fake, slap it onto the end of that deal, and it raises his APY up to that range. And he will never play on that fake deal ever. He'll never play on that fake year. And it's like, I get the APY conversation because it's how we rank these guys, but at the end of the day, that's not how we truly judge contracts. It's how we rank contracts, but it's not how we judge them. And so it's like there's so much more to this conversation than like what's being thrown out there and like the rage bait and the preying of on people's emotions and recency biased and confirming priors and all these different types of things that contribute to this nauseating conversation about this. But at the end of the day, it's really simple. They're going to take his resume, they're going to compare it to the market, and the market is going to dictate what he gets paid. And then it's up to the 49ers and it's up to Brock and his representatives to structure a deal that works for both of them. That works for Brock getting paid, Brock getting the value he deserves, and for the 49ers to be able to still build a team around him. This notion that if you pay Brock and you can't build a team around him is, at this point, rage bait. Because this is where the league is headed. The average pay for quarterbacks, when we look back at this conversation in about two years, the average pay is going to be like 55 million per year. Like that's just going to be league average. That's what guys who's a league average quarterback right now. Who's a league average quarterback that might get paid here pretty soon? I'm trying to see what the quarterbacks be looking like. Yeah, they're all kind of paid where they're slotted. Like, it's funny. Do you think Sam is really gonna for like this notion that Sam is only gonna be 30 million per year. It's kind of funny to me because it's crystal clear the cost of doing business for a semi-competent quarterback in the NFL is around 50. Um, I'm just not of the mindset that with how well uh Sam is playing and the fact that he's an unrestricted free agent, which means a bidding war can be created. There is a demand for quarterbacks. He's absolutely rejuvenated his um reputation, and someone's going to pay for that. Everyone keeps referencing the what's his name? Baker Mayfield contract. When did that get inked? That was a couple years ago at this point. That was like 2 years ago, wasn't it? Or was it this year? I'm not up to speed on Baker's contract, so I don't even know when it actually went through. Oh, he signed this year, I think. So I think he signed this offseason? I don't know. We'll have to come back to that one. But the point is that the market is going to be dictating this price, and I don't know, man. It just feels like there's a lot of anger and animosity over something that is, and it is what it is, kind of a situation. Like making a lot out of nothing. I apologize, throwback. I've been ranting over here. So let me get to your super chat. I appreciate it. I've just been over here ranting. I haven't been able to disengage. Throwback says, Happy New Year to you and your family. Hope all is well. 2025 will be a better year. When will Jake Moody be off the roster? He needs to go. Well, Happy New Year to you and your family as well. Throwback. Happy New Year to everyone in the chat. I know it hasn't been the best season for the 49ers, but at the end of the day, man, like, did I just pull a Debo? At the end of the day, um, I don't know, man. I understand all the different elements at play. People want people want a Josh Allen. People want a Patrick Mahomes. The only problem is those guys, they're not easy to find. The 49ers already proved that by trading 3 first-round draft picks to try to find that player in Trey Lance. They failed miserably, and that landed them on Brock Purdy. And I don't know. I think people are scared of Brock being the guy because of some of the struggles that he has. I think we all agree that, you know, some of the struggles in weather is valid. Um, some of the decision making that leads to turnovers is valid. But I can think of every single quarterback who has been paid big time money, who has gone through stretches of their career, especially around the age of Brock, where these issues were also persistent as well. And that just seems to be the context that is voided whenever these conversations that are had, is all the guys that are constantly being compared to Brock for what they are now. They're never compared to like when it was actually going down. And then when you're actually comparing Brock, you're comparing him to all the elite quarterbacks. And there's this thought process that paying Brock top dollar somehow means he's elite. And I think what I keep trying to say to everybody is that the market is the market. The market doesn't dictate whether you're elite or not. That's just the cost of doing business. The cost of doing business at the NFL is clearly in the 50s for starting quarterback. That's just the cost of business. That to me isn't a measure of being elite, because if we're going to play that game, why is Trevor up there? Why is Tua up there? Because that's not an indication that they're elite. Why is Dak up there? It's not an indication that they're an elite quarterback. It's the cost of doing business. Because guess what? Having a starting caliber quarterback is hard to find. If we haven't figured that out as a 49ers franchise who's had a number 1 overall pick, who's had number 3 overall pick and taken a quarterback. So I think it's tough when the 49ers finally have a competent quarterback in front of them and the fan base is still unhappy. I get being unhappy with this season. I get being unhappy with a lot of the outcomes this year. I get scratching your head being like, Brock, what was that throw? I get all that. Those are all valid things to think about and feel. But Brock has proven that he can be a above average quarterback. Even if he has an average physical build, maybe even a below average physical build, he plays above average. He plays above his weight. Like I don't know, man. It's a weird scenario that we're in of just hyperbolic take and emotions and if we pay Brock, we can't build a team. And I fully disagree with that. So it's like those arguments don't hit my ears. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. Like, I understand. I have a little hesitation. Like, paying Brock 60, I kind of like, that seems kind of like a lot. Seems kind of like a lot of money until I run through the exercise of comparing him and his resume and understanding how the market works and just living through it with Brandon Ayuk and watching Brandon Ayuk go from a $26 million a year wide receiver to a $30 million a year wide receiver over a course of a month because they waited. If that doesn't explain to you what the market is, then I don't know what to tell you. I don't think anyone was expecting Brandon Ayuk to be a $30 million a year wide receiver when that last offseason started. I didn't. But that's what happens when you allow the market to dictate the price. And so the same thing will happen with Brock. The market will dictate the price. So I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. It's just going to continue to be a toxic conversation for the rest of the offseason because it's clear that, I mean, it wouldn't be a 49ers offseason if we weren't split down the middle over the quarterback. One group absolutely despising the quarterback and another group who rocks with the quarterback. It wouldn't be a 49ers offseason any other way. So does any part of me want Burden or McMillan? Dude, I want McMillan, to be honest. Like, we talked about that last year when I was doing cowling prep. I would love that. And again, I'm pretty confident that you can find offensive linemen in second through fourth. Might not be your elite guys, right? But I'm pretty confident you can find starters on the offensive line in rounds 2 through 4, like clockwork every year. So if Trent is coming back, you have McKivitz, who I know fans are ready to move on from, but I believe he's under contract for one more year. And if you wanted to supplement, you know, Ayuk, McMillan, hopefully Kittle, and you build, you go get Dahlman at center. You go draft another interior guard and you draft potentially a tackle. I have no problems with that. But I also want an edge, man. I need that defensive line to be back. I need this defensive line for the 49ers to be dominant again. That's really what I want. We've seen it goes both ways, man. It goes both ways. This team needs to be built from the trenches out. Like, it has to. I'm tired of, I know how Kyle has, like, I figured it out very quickly of how Kyle drafts. Figured it out in the first draft before they even drafted. And I'm not in any draft rooms, but I'm a self-appointed draft scout. And they don't see it the way that I see it. Again, I've talked about it a million times. If I was in a position to build the team, the first thing that I would focus on is building the best offensive line and the best defensive line imaginable. And then I would just let everything else fall into place. Obviously, you want a quarterback. Obviously, want a defensive end. But, man, O-line, D-line, some of the best in the game. Bro, you could do anything, especially for a run-first team like the 49ers. Could you imagine Christian McCaffrey running behind the best offensive line in football? What would CMC look like behind the best offensive line in football? Like, what would Brock look like with the best offensive line in football? What would Kyle's offense look like with the best offensive line in football? Just saying, man. Darius says, looking forward to the offseason. I know it's early, but do you know when mock drafts will be posted and even breakdowns of college players? Absolutely. Shout out Darius. I'm waiting till draft season starts on January 6th. For me, it's probably started for other people. For me, I always wait till the end of the year for the season to be officially wrapped. So for me, draft season starts January 6th, and we're going to be full blown prospects, mock drafts, film breakdowns, probably even prospect interviews, all that stuff, because this is going to be the first time that we can actually dive into draft season at the end of the offseason, because we've typically been covering the 49ers through the playoffs. I haven't been able to focus on the draft. Last year, I would say, was the least prepared for the draft that I had ever been, because the 49ers went all the way to the Super Bowl. So, and you flip to the Super Bowl, and then it's like, boom, all right, we're on to the combine and all that stuff. So, I'll be at the Senior Bowl this year, so that will be huge. I cannot tell you how helpful it was for me to be able to scout at the Senior Bowl, and what that information did for me throughout the draft process that particular year. So I'm really excited to get back to the Senior Bowl, really excited to get eyes on, then combine, and then we're going to be this is going to be an interesting, like I said, it's going to be an interesting draft season, because it might be the most locked in to a draft season that I've ever been. So completely contrasting years from last year to this year, but it makes for a lot more draft content. That's for sure. Oh, you know the vibes. Todd. Gonna have to get Jordan Elliott back on the channel. Start breaking down some draft prospects. I talk about this all the time. They would hate me in that war room. They would hate me, because you guys know I bang the table for the players that I like. I'm kind of obnoxious about it. They'd be like, get this ginger bearded son of a gun out of here. Who thought it was a good idea to let this guy in here? They would never, ever. They'd be like, nah, we're good. Oh, man. Who let Austin Pleasants into the war room? Nice. So, hey, man, that's what I'm saying. Just let me get a little post-it note action. Let me just slip you. Let me, like, come on, think about this guy. Just think about him. Or just let me draft the third round. I think I could actually do well in that role. Just let me focus on the third round. And, that means I got to find a gem. It's not going to be a high profile guy. Just let me cook in the third. I'll come up with someone good. I promise. Hey, I was high on Fred Warner. Does that count? George Kittle is probably one of my all-time biggest hives when you talk about, like, the Brian Burns hive. You guys just weren't around for the George Kittle hive. You did not see me being obnoxious over a blocking tight end out of Iowa. You did not see that occur. You've seen it occur for the other prospects like Brian Burns. You didn't see it for George Kittle. I've told you this. I got into arguments. I got the receipts. I got the tweets. I got them all. I got it all. I got receipts saying George Kittle is going to be one of the best players in this draft class. Oh, I got all the receipts on Kittle. I got into argument. I got blocked. Like, I think it was like Travis Clay or someone like that. Like, I got blocked by uh one of these big time guys because they were like, "Oh, George Kittle." I was like, "Oh, you better put some respect on George Kittle. You better put some respect on that fullback named Greg." I got all the receipts, man. I even called him Greg in the tweet. That was the best part. One of the tweets I called him Greg Kittle. Oh, phenomenal. So good. I didn't know his name, but boy, did I know he was going to be a good football player. And George, hey, shout out to George. He made me look smart. He made me look so smart for believing in a fifth round blocking tight end to be, dude. So my comp for Kittle coming out was Greg Olsen. Greg Olsen was fresh off of his third consecutive 1,000-yard receiving season, and you should have seen the hate that I got for comparing George Kittle coming out of Iowa to Greg Olsen. Oh, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. They hated that comp. They could not stand it. They're like, how does a guy who doesn't even have 800 receiving yards over his 4 years at Iowa compared to Greg Olsen, who's coming off his third consecutive 1,000-yard receiving season? Well, you know how you do that? George Kittle's coming off his fourth 1,000 receiving yard season. That's the beauty of being able to project. Draft evaluation isn't just evaluating who they are now. Draft evaluation is about projecting out. Who can they be? What can they be? I'm telling you, man. Oh, dude, I post the receipts on my Instagram like once a year. It's a pretty common occurrence. I post the receipts all the time just to let everyone know, like, yeah, I was high. I was real high on George Kittle. Could you imagine? They're like, all right, we're gonna let this Brad guy announce the pick, and I go up there and I change it. Oh my gosh. And again, I have misses. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I'm perfect. We all have misses. We all have our guys that we thought were gonna be hits that just did not pan out. I've had plenty of those. But I do, with so many years now of doing this, I have to say, dude, my track record's pretty nice. I can't even lie, bruh. Can't even lie, bruh. Dante Moncrief, the GOAT. Hey, we started out strong. He had 2 phenomenal first years and then just disappeared into the sunset. I like to, like Jalen Strong out of ASU. I was a big Jalen Strong guy. There's definitely been misses. We'll have to do a draft miss show where we just go through all the guys that we thought were going to be so good that were not good. I well with Darnold, I called Darnold a bust. I thought he was going to be putrid in the NFL. I thought he was going to be terrible. And for the most part, I was proven right. But hey, good for him. He's proven to bounce back, and I like that story. Listen, I didn't think Sam was going to be able to get it together up here, but he has, at least in this situation that he's in. And good for him. Good for him. I called him a bust on arrival. Before he was drafted, I said, this guy's trash. Just because I didn't like his decision-making process. I didn't think he had the confidence. I didn't think he saw the field. I didn't think he could play quarterback from that perspective. He had an amazing arm. Fantastic arm. But didn't have the QB intangibles. But credit to him. They've showed up. Just took a while. So keep that in mind when you want to trash Brock right now. I'm just saying. He's 25 in his second year. And, before we want to start, calling Brock Purdy trash, like, have you thought about what Brock Purdy could look like with 2 or 3 more years of experience? 2 or 3 more years of improving his arm, getting better at making decisions. It's pretty good so far. Purdy will obviously never have that elite cannon, which it is what it is, but doesn't mean he can't win you a ton of games. And that's all that really matters at the end of the day. So we'll have this argument. I think we talked about this a long time ago too. He's got the Steph Curry kind of thing going on. Steph is elite because he's an elite shooter, but I'm not really comparing them from like a skill set perspective, more so perception perspective. Curry was always perceived to be too small and, not a big guy. So he was always diminished for that. And he was always discredited until hell. He was even discredited by people all the way up until just recently, him winning in the Olympics. So, and that guy's the greatest shooter of all time. So for Brock, like, this conversation will always exist. It will always be there. And just like with Tom Brady, he got it until he won a Super Bowl with the Bucks. Before that conversation went away. So it is what it is. I knew this was going to be how it is. You just wish that, you go out there and you don't throw those 2 interceptions to pour gasoline on the fire. But it is what it is. They're gonna hate no matter what. So just go out, just ball, win football games, all that stuff. 49ers make some roster moves. Dre Greenlaw officially to IR. And they have signed Zach Johnson to the practice squad. All right. More offensive line help. But I appreciate everyone, as always, for tapping in. Draft season's right around the corner. We'll have plenty of stuff to talk about. Appreciate y'all. I'm out. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see it.